August 2021. Kabul International Airport. Thousands desperate to escape. The United States had the most advanced military on Earth: stealth fighters, precision missiles, satellite networks worth billions. But none of it mattered, because they had run out of the one resource no weapon system can replace: time. From the deserts of Iraq to the mountains of Ukraine, from the South China Sea to the cyber battlefields invisible to the naked eye, the wars of the 21st century have revealed a brutal truth that shatters everything we thought we knew about military power. The side with the most missiles doesn't win. The side with the most time does. For decades, we measured military strength in megatons and megabytes, nuclear arsenals, carrier strike groups, stealth technology. The logic was simple: whoever could deliver the most devastating blow, the fastest, would win. The 1991 Gulf War seemed to prove this doctrine. In just 42 days, a coalition led by the United States dismantled the fourth largest army in the world. Precision-guided munitions, total air superiority. It looked like the future of warfare had arrived. Clean, quick, overwhelming. Then came Afghanistan, then Iraq, then the cracks in the theory began to show. The United States won every major battle, controlled the skies, possessed technological supremacy that was almost science fiction compared to the enemy. And yet, 20 years later, the Taliban raised their flag over Kabul. ISIS carved out a caliphate. Insurgencies that couldn't afford a single fighter jet outlasted the most powerful military in human history. What happened? The answer lies not in what we could destroy, but in how long we could sustain the fight. Welcome to the era where time is the ultimate weapon. Every bullet fired, every missile launched, every drone in the air, it all depends on one thing: the supply chain. And supply chains run on time. Consider this. During the peak of operations in Afghanistan, the U.S. military consumed over 22 gallons of fuel per soldier per day. Not in combat, just to exist in theater. Every drop had to be shipped thousands of miles, trucked through hostile territory, guarded by convoys that became targets themselves. In 2010, a single gallon of fuel delivered to a forward operating base in Afghanistan cost the U.S. military $400. Not because fuel was expensive, because getting it there in time was nearly impossible. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, former Director of Military Intelligence, put it bluntly: "We became a logistics force that occasionally fought, rather than a fighting force supported by logistics." Fast forward to 2022. Russia invades Ukraine with overwhelming firepower, thousands of tanks, artillery systems, air superiority. Within weeks, their advance stalls. Why? Because their supply columns couldn't keep up. Ukrainian forces didn't need to destroy the entire Russian army. They just needed to destroy its timeline. A modern tank battalion can carry fuel for maybe 300 miles. After that, it's a 60-ton paperweight. Russian forces couldn't sustain operations because they had planned for a 72-hour war. When it stretched into weeks, their logistics infrastructure collapsed. Time exposed what firepower could not: the brittleness of their entire system. There's an old saying in military circles: amateurs study tactics, professionals study logistics. But there's a third level: strategists study patience. Vietnam taught America a lesson it still struggles to accept. North Vietnamese General Vo Nguyen Giap understood something fundamental. You will kill 10 of our men, and we will kill one of yours. But in the end, it is you who will tire. The United States won virtually every tactical engagement, but Giap wasn't fighting for territory. He was fighting for time. Every month the war continued. American public support eroded. Every casualty report strengthened opposition. The North Vietnamese didn't need to win militarily. They needed to outlast politically. The same pattern repeated in Afghanistan. The Taliban had a saying: "You have the watches, we have the time." They didn't need advanced weapons. They needed patience and the political will to wait 20 years. In democracies, time is a political commodity. Governments face elections. Media demands results. Public patience has a half-life measured in fiscal quarters, not generations. Insurgencies exploit this asymmetry ruthlessly. In Syria, Assad's regime survived not because it was militarily superior, rebel forces and ISIS nearly toppled him multiple times, but because Russia and Iran were willing to invest time. They drip-fed support, accepted slow progress, and waited for the international community to lose interest.
Again, not through decisive victories, but through attrition. Through waiting while his enemies fractured, lost funding, and exhausted themselves. Time became his fortress. But time operates on another dimension entirely in modern warfare, one where missiles are irrelevant and battlefields are invisible. December 23, 2015. Western Ukraine. 230,000 people lose power simultaneously. Not from bombs, from code. Russian hackers from Unit 74455, known as Sandworm, had spent months infiltrating Ukrainian infrastructure. They didn't need to destroy the grid. They just needed to demonstrate they could, whenever they wanted. The Stuxnet virus that crippled Iran's nuclear program was discovered in 2010. But intelligence suggests it had been quietly working for years, spinning centrifuges just slightly too fast, degrading precision components so gradually that Iranian scientists thought they were dealing with engineering problems, not sabotage. Chinese Advanced Persistent Threat Groups, APT-10, APT-41, infiltrate networks and stay hidden for years. They're not launching attacks. They're positioning themselves, waiting, mapping every system, every vulnerability, so that when or if conflict comes, they can paralyze their enemy in minutes. And then there's economic warfare, the slowest, most patient form of conflict. China doesn't need to invade Taiwan militarily. They're playing a different game. Secure 90% of global semiconductor manufacturing capacity. Control rare earth mineral processing. Finance infrastructure projects across developing nations through Belt and Road. These strategies don't yield results in months or years. They take decades. But they reshape global power without firing a shot. While Western governments plan in 4-year election cycles, China plans in 50-year infrastructure projects. Russia weaponized energy dependence. Germany's Nord Stream pipeline wasn't just business, it was a time bomb. Every year Germany grew more dependent, Russia gained more leverage. When war came in Ukraine, Europe faced a choice: support Ukraine or freeze. The weapon wasn't missiles. It was decades of strategic patience. February 2022. Russia invades Ukraine with 190,000 troops. Western intelligence estimates Kyiv will fall in 72 hours. It's been over 2 years. What happened? Ukraine understood immediately. They couldn't win through firepower. Russia had more tanks, more artillery, more aircraft. But Ukraine had time, if they could buy it. The strategy was never to destroy the Russian military. It was to delay long enough for international support to mobilize, for sanctions to bite, for Russian logistics to collapse, for winter to arrive, for ammunition to run low. Every ambush that destroyed a supply convoy didn't just eliminate trucks, it added days to the Russian timeline. Every bridge destroyed, every rail line cut, every minute of delay multiplied across a 1,000-mile front. By mid-2023, the war had become an artillery duel, and artillery runs on time. Russia fires an estimated 20,000 shells per day. Ukraine, at points, was firing 6,000 to 7,000. But they didn't need parity. They needed to outlast. HIMARS rocket systems didn't win the war through destruction. They won through economics of time. Every ammo depot destroyed was 30,000 shells that would take Russia weeks to replace. Every command post hit was days of operational paralysis. And then came the drones. $500 commercial quadcopters dropping grenades on $5 million tanks. Not because the explosion would destroy the tank, but because it would disable it. Force the crew to abandon it. Require weeks of recovery and repair. Maritime drones forced Russia's Black Sea Fleet to retreat from Sevastopol. Not through naval superiority, through persistent harassment over months. Every week Russian ships had to stay farther from shore was another week Ukrainian grain exports could resume. The result? After 2 years, Russia controls roughly the same territory it held in summer 2022. The war has become a test of who can sustain operations longest, who has more ammunition reserves, who can replace losses faster, who can endure economically and politically. Time is the only metric that matters now. So, where does this leave us? In an era of hypersonic missiles and artificial intelligence, how does time remain the ultimate weapon? Because the technologies of the future are built on foundations measured in decades. A semiconductor fabrication plant takes 5 to 7 years and $20 billion to build, if you have the expertise, which only 3 nations do. Rare earth refining capacity takes 10 to 15 years to develop. Space-based systems depend on launch capacity built over generations. Reconnaissance satellites take years to design and deploy. GPS systems are maintained by infrastructure started in the 1970s. AI military systems need training data accumulated over years of operations. Autonomous weapons require validation testing measured in decades before deployment. There are no shortcuts. China's threat to Taiwan isn't measured in invasion readiness, it's measured in windows. Can they invade before Taiwan's defensive systems mature? Before international alliances solidify? Before their own demographic crisis deepens? Every year that passes without action closes options. Time is both their weapon and their enemy. Climate change is opening Arctic shipping routes, but only over decades. The nation that secures those routes now will control them for generations. Russia is building bases today for advantages that won't materialize until 2050. And then there's the human factor, the irreducible element. Training a fighter pilot takes 3 to 5 years. Developing a special operations soldier takes 5 to 10 years. Building institutional military knowledge takes generations. You cannot rapidly produce expertise. Time is the currency of competence. This understanding is reshaping military doctrine worldwide. The U.S. National Defense Strategy now emphasizes integrated deterrence, not just the ability to win wars, but the capacity to sustain operations indefinitely. Nations are rebuilding ammunition stockpiles, not for one decisive campaign, but for years of grinding conflict. Artillery shell production is ramping up, not to 100,000 rounds, but to millions, with capacity to sustain that production for a decade. Economic warfare is being recognized as equal to kinetic warfare. Supply chain resilience isn't a business concern, it's national security. Nations are diversifying suppliers, nearshoring production, securing energy independence. These aren't preparations for a battle. They're preparations for an era. Alliance structures are being reinforced because wars are no longer won by coalitions of the willing. They're won by coalitions of the durable. The question isn't who will fight with us, it's who will still be fighting with us in year 5. Military reserve systems are being expanded, not for surge capacity, but for rotation capacity. The ability to maintain operations not for months, but for years without exhausting the active force. Military power has always been paradoxical. The strongest empires rarely lasted longest. Rome fell not to a superior force, but to time and overextension. The British Empire didn't lose a final decisive battle. It simply couldn't sustain its reach across centuries. We built weapons that could destroy the world in minutes. But we still can't win wars in months. Because war isn't a physics problem, it's a human problem. And humans operate on a different timeline than missiles. The next great power conflict, whether it comes in Taiwan, the Arctic, cyberspace, or somewhere we haven't imagined, won't be decided by who strikes first or who strikes hardest. It will be decided by who can endure longest. The most powerful weapon in warfare isn't the one that destroys the fastest. It's the political will, economic resilience, social cohesion, and strategic patience to fight for as long as it takes. Because in the end, every war is a race against time. And the clock never stops ticking.